Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, I'm really excited for our conversation with Melanie Parish because we're going to be talking about experimental leadership. And I think now, given the current climate and so much of what's going on, this is so important. And she has such a great philosophy. So, we're going to dive in and chat all about it today. So, let me tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to get to all the good stuff. So, Melanie is an author, a public speaker. She's host of the Experimental Leader podcast, and she's founder of the Experimental Leader Academy and also a master certified coach. She is an expert in problem solving, constraints management, operations, strategic hiring, and brand development. And she shows people new ways of thinking about their leadership, informed by her understanding of the fast paced ride of technology innovation. So, Melanie, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Hi, Krista. It's so great to be here with you. I'm excited.
Me too. All right. So, experimental leadership. I love this concept. I love everything that you share about it. So, for our listeners who may be or may not be familiar with it, how do you define experimental leadership and how do you think that applies in entrepreneurship?
Well, I think that the idea of being an experimental leader, so there's a couple of parts. One is the idea of being experimental, and we're all natural experimenters, and no one's more experimental than an entrepreneur. Our when we put our own dollars on the line, and I've been an entrepreneur for my entire career. Um, when we put our own dollars on the line, we want things to work. And so we measure and we look and we watch. So when we experiment, we're measuring and we're watching and we're looking. So anytime we try something, we're experimenting. So we all experiment all the time, but we can put some methodology behind it so that we're not just willy-nilly trying things and then getting upset because we feel fear, which is how we work a lot as entrepreneurs. We're like, oh, we feel it. And so we change it. So we can actually do it strategically. So we can experiment strategically. And then when you think about being an experimental leader, we can train our teams. We can teach our teams to experiment. We can teach our teams to collect data when they are experimenting, whether they're calling it that or not, because everything we do the first time is an experiment. And so the reason this is important is that people live and die in their ideas and organizations. So how many times have we heard, oh yeah, Bill had that idea, but it didn't work. And then Bill's out or Bill's stupid. Ideas aren't like that. Ideas are just that. They're ideas. And we can embrace ideas collectively, and we can embrace bad ideas collectively, and we can try things, and we can decide to try them, and we can decide they're not good ideas collectively and not vilify the person that came up with the idea, because organizations that innovate and are agile and flexible and productive and profitable have lots of ideas. So we don't want to shut down ideas in our organizations. So being an experimental leader and helping people have lots of ideas, that's good leadership because it leads to lots of ideas and lots of people fostering ideas and carrying experimentation of those ideas to see what works.
Yeah, I love that concept so much. And being somebody who has been an agile transformation consultant for so many years, it resonates so much to me. And I think one of the ways that you can really stop growth in an organization is to cut off that fostering of new ideas. So I think it's just such a great concept. And why today more so than ever would you say it's important? Or do you think it is more so important than ever today? I kind of look at some of what's going on and think people really do need to embrace the concept of experimentation right now.
Well, anytime we have layoffs, and we have lots of layoffs going on in tech right now, anytime we have layoffs, we have fear in our systems. And anytime we have fear in our systems, people start to have that fear of getting it right. And so, what we need is opening. People need to do more, they need to do more faster, and they need to do more collaboratively. They don't need to constrain. So, um, so experimentation, continuous improvement is a really good way to maximize success. If we're sharing ideas, if we're looking at data, if we're looking for how we can improve the idea tomorrow, instead of trying to have one big bang idea that hits it out of the gate, and you know this from agile, how do you keep improving? How do you look at it? How do you collect data? How do you look at what's your prototype today, and then how do you make it a little better tomorrow? um, that is perfect for these times, because this is not the time for the giant investment that hits it out of the park. This is the time for the thing that's pretty good when it starts, and then it gets better and better and better and better so that you can count on it. So that's the world of experimentation and continuous improvement. And so those two things together. So sometimes you experiment because you want to find a whole new thing, but experimentation works for both continuous improvement and for the next big idea. You can
Yeah.
try a prototype, and you can also use it for continuous improvement.
Yeah, you are speaking my language. That right there, I feel like is that Kaizen culture that I think organizations really want, right? You want to be in that place of continuous improvement. And that all comes down to experimentation. And not everything you do is going to work. And that doesn't mean that it's a failure. It doesn't mean anything. That's learning. It's great data. It's great insight so that you can try the next thing and just keep experimenting till you find what does land.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So, how about somebody who is listening and saying, I think I want to be more of an experimental leader. Maybe either I just go for the big things and I don't really do the continuous improvement sides, or I play it a little bit too safe. What would you say? How can somebody embrace more of that experimental leader mindset?
Yeah, often, I actually have an improvement kata with a set of questions. And if anybody wants to email me at melanie@experimentalleader.com, I'm happy to send you a kata card that'll walk you through some questions to think about. What I pull this card out when I ask my clients. There are some set questions, which is sort of, what's your target condition? So everybody's got a problem. And so what I would ask them is, what's your target condition? What's your current state? And what are the obstacles that are keeping you from getting there? And there's lots of people that do this. This is not me. I didn't make this up. This is straight out of Lean and Toyota, and Mike Rother and Toyota Kata talks about it. Like, this is solid ground stuff that I put in my book just because I wanted it all to be there for people who are doing knowledge work, not factory work. And and to frame it into the experimental leader culture. um so but I will share it because I think it's so important to be able to take something. I have two coaching certifications, and when I don't know what to do with somebody, I pull out this 5-question card. So I've trained as a coach, I've worked as a coach for 23 years, and I still use this card because I cannot improve on these 5 questions. They are so good. And anybody can pull out these 5 questions. And as long as they don't try to get fancy, they're going to do really well with them, with anybody in their organization. Now, the things that they want to think about is keep the timeline short. So, like, a week is a long experiment. People get fancy with their experiments and they think they're going to do some giant experiment that's going to last for weeks or months or years. And it's really hard to collect data, and it's really hard to change. So, you want a day experiment if you can. And if you have to, a week. Like, that's it. Don't go longer than that. Because if so, you're thinking too big for continuous improvement. And And you want to make sure you're really clear on your target condition. What are you hoping is going to happen? And getting that right takes some nuance. So that's sort of the place I mentor people to get their target conditions right. I'm guessing you work on this stuff too.
Yeah, I love it. There's so much crossover. I'm like, you're the first person who's ever mentioned kata on one of my calls. I love this. Everyone listening is like, what are they saying? What do they mean? Can you explain to somebody what a kata is for somebody who does not know?
Yeah, so it's actually so the where it comes from is martial arts, Japanese martial arts, where it's a daily practice. But what the way that we use it with these questions is that we use it as a practice of asking questions in a really specific way. And so we've shamelessly stolen some great practice to continuously improve our business, and it was used a lot in factory work first. So we've even stolen it from factory work to apply it to knowledge work. And so there's a lot of, and this is why it takes translation after translation after translation, because you're using a metaphor on top of a metaphor on top of a metaphor. But it becomes this incredibly valuable tool.
Yeah, I agree fully. And that's honestly everything I've done with lean out method is taken a concept that was used very heavily in lean manufacturing and translated it to more coaching, consulting, and service-based businesses with their unique needs, especially those at that multi-six, multi-seven figure level that have very different challenges and different opportunities than your big multi-billion dollar businesses do. So it's all a translation. Good business practice is good business practice, and you just figure out how to evolve it and make it just right for the set of conditions that it's being used within.
Well, and what I find, I have a million clients, and I don't know if you find this, but I find this. I have all my clients. I don't have a million clients. I have like 22 or something, which is too many, but that's that plus all the things I do is a plenty. But um, I they always are saying, "Have you read this book? Have you read this book? Have you read this book?" And I'm like, "No, I'm still working on the book. I'm still integrating the things I learned in the book I read 8 years ago." Because when I read a really meaty book and I start to integrate the concepts, it takes me some time. I'm still working on the things that I still am working on integration of Gold Rat and Mike Rother's book, my own book. I still don't know all the what to do with my own book, and I wrote the damn thing. Like I'm shocked at some of the concepts as I play with them over time. Wow, there's some interesting thinking in there, and I guess it's mine, but it's like even having to when I start to think of the implications of it over time, um, I f- I find it fascinating. Like not because I was smart, but because the concepts it was built on, and then playing with it along with coaching and along with leadership, are really interesting. And so I'm a slow burn. I am not a fast adopter of like a million books because I it takes me a while to integrate them with each of my clients, and um I find that interesting too.
It is, but I think that's a great example of going deep on something instead of going wide on something. And I think in general, just what do we tend to do? We love new things. So people do tend to go wide on things. It's like if I read everything, I'm going to have everything I possibly need. But you do need to actually take action and figure out what you do want to integrate. So I love that you take the time to really actually deeply integrate things. And for anybody who this whole concept sounds interesting to, definitely read the book. It's really good. And if you like lean, which I'm gonna assume that you do, or at least you're curious if you're listening to this podcast, when I read it right in the beginning, she starts talking about lean, and I'm like, oh, I found my book. I
I
loved
know,
it.
and I don't say we're tech, and I don't say we're lean, but I would say that we're lean friendly and we're tech friendly.
Mhm.
We don't say it, and I did actually put the Agile Manifesto in there because I've talked to so many developers who've never read it. And I'm like, dude, you got to read it. It's in my book. Just go find it there. After Googling it too many times, I was like, yeah, I'll just stick in the book.
I love it. All right. So there was something that we were talking about before we actually started recording today that I thought was fascinating because I think it's such a great example of experimental leadership in practice. And you were talking about collaborative pricing. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is, what kind of why you do it, and how somebody might be able to leverage that as an experiment in their business?
Sure. Well, it part of it is because I've had really long-term relationships with my clients. So I have a client I've had 22 years. I have clients I've had 8 years and 9 years. Like, my clients don't leave me, partly because I make them money, but, um, maybe because they like me and I'm quirky and weird and funny and I keep learning things. I don't know why they don't leave, but they don't, which gives me a business problem, for your entrepreneurs out there. They probably have this problem too. You may have this problem too, that people stay, and then your pricing goes up because you get more mature in your business. I've been a coach for 23 years. I don't charge what I charged 23 years ago. And so you have to raise your prices. And I used to have these sort of tough love conversations where I was like, I have to give you a price increase. And I hated them. They were awful because every other conversation in my business was about me being in service to my clients. And then for for about 5 years, I didn't do any because I hated those conversations so much. I just stopped doing those price increases, partly because I was working for a consulting company in tech, and we were kind of making what the I never used this phrase, but I'm gonna use it now. We made kind of mafia wages. We went into a Fortune 50 company and piles of money were just showing up in my bank account. And my individual clients were not where my income came from. And so it wasn't all that important what I charged them. It was kind of the fun work I did. And then I stopped working for them and I was like, oh, shoot. Oh, shoot. I haven't given them a price increase in a really long time. And so I realized I wanted to do it differently. And, um, and so I started just having a conversation. So my pricing structure is just that I have a sliding scale for everyone. And I give them a choice between usually 2 or 3 prices. Like, I always want them to choose which price they do. And sometimes I say, "I thought you might wanna be my highest paying client." And I give them a price and I tell them what that would be. And sometimes they choose it, which
Hmm.
you'd think they would choose not to be. And then sometimes they'll come back and say, um, yeah, that's fine, but I'd like this. One of my favorite was one client came back and said, "Yeah, that's fine, just do that, but I'd like to have laser coaching sessions, like one-off sessions every now and then." And I was like, "You've literally had that for 6 years and never used it." And he was like, "Oh, okay, dude, great."
Oh, that's the best. Well, you know that apparently it was a wanted service.
Right, and then I had another one, and I think this one's as interesting. I mean, so this leads to such interesting conversations. So I had one where I was like, "Hey, I need to give you a price increase," and he actually said no. And he said, "I didn't ask you your price when I hired you. It was a mistake." And I had a little sticker shock, and he hadn't been using the coaching particularly well. And he said, "I'm not getting that kind of value out of it. I don't want a price increase." And I was like, "Well, we sure better figure out how you're going to use your coaching better to get you some value." And he started using his coaching differently. Now I haven't asked him if he wants to do a price increase, but I did like that he became a more interesting client for me when he started using his coaching better.
Hmm.
And so that conversation, even though he said no, was as rewarding as the yeses. And the other thing this has led to, so I do this also when I start with people is, I'd like you to be in here. Where do you want to be? And they'll usually pick a number and they pick the number that feels good to them. I find what it has taught me is people are astoundingly generous. They are not looking to be at the lowest possible rate. They want to be at a rate that resonates with their heart and won't hurt them. But I also don't want to hurt them with my pricing, and I don't always know their pricing when they start. I don't know what their constraints are because they won't tell me. They can't tell me how much pain they're in when they start with me either. But I do have some bottom lines. I'm not going to, it's not a sliding scale to zero. And then I keep 2 pro bono spots in my practice, or a sliding scale that go way down. I've had clients that I've gone to and said, I'm going to work with you. How much do you want to pay me? And they can really pay me anything to start, and then I'll raise them over time. And then the other thing is I do this collaborative pricing when I do contracts with larger companies too. Like, hey, how much do you have to spend? And let me put a program together for you. So I don't pitch them something that they say yes or no to. I know how much I want out of it, and they'll help me come up with the program based on their budget.
What I love so much about this is I bet so many people wouldn't even think that that's possible. But I love that you do that not only with individuals, but with larger companies.
Oh
And
yeah.
clearly it's working.
I'm
At least it's working
never
for
gonna
now.
I will never ever come with a proposal that I don't know what the budget is before I start.
Mm.
I will never ever do that again. I will know our budget is approved before we start. You tell me what you want the dollar amount to be on this proposal. I would never ever again do a proposal that I don't know what they want that dollar figure to be on that. I'm not going to waste my time because I don't want them to tell me it's too expensive at the end. If they're going to waste my time making a proposal, I want them to tell me what the dollar amount they want it to be. I don't want to have that conversation. I will tell them the best way to spend the money in because they're getting so much of my expertise when I put a proposal together for free.
Hmm.
The other thing I will say, like when I'm with a client and then they want to talk about more business, I'll also meet with them once, maybe twice, and then I'll just say, "Hey, we've met a couple of times, at some point, like in the next meeting or so, do you think I could get on the clock?" And they'll usually say, "Oh, of course, no problem." And then I'll just start billing them for our meetings to talk about new business.
Brilliant. I love it. And so how can somebody take this thinking, not necessarily that concept, which I bet a lot of you listening are going to leverage that concept, but just this thinking about pricing, where people probably think there's a certain way you do pricing, there's a certain way you do proposals. Meanwhile, you've come up with kind of a more innovative way of thinking about it that's working in your ecosystem. So how can someone take that type of experimental leadership thinking and apply it into their business? Any tips?
Well, I think if you're having a physical reaction in your body when you do something in your business, like you it takes you a long time to put a proposal together because it doesn't feel good, or you're afraid something's going to happen. Like for me, I kept feeling like I was going to put this big proposal together and then I was never going to hear from the person. And I hear that all the time from people in business. um like, create a process, try a process. Like I never would send out a proposal without having a meeting to go over the proposal when they're coming. I'm going to talk them through it. I'm not going to, because they will never open your proposal. And then what do? Like, hold your own time as valuable, and then try experiments to see how you can have the experience line up with what your body, your soul is telling you. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you want your business to be a place you love to work. You don't want to work in a crappy job that you've created for yourself. That's just dumb. And I do it to myself sometimes. Sometimes I'm on Zoom meetings from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I think, oh my gosh, nobody wants this job. And I need to do something about it. But so if you're having a reaction, you're worried about something, see if you can create an experiment to try to relieve that, because your body's telling you something. Your soul is telling you that you've got a process that isn't serving you or your business.
Brilliant. Yes, and I've had many of those proposals that I have poured like days into creating and sent out, and you either never hear anything back again, or it's like, we're reviewing it, we'll get back to you. And there is no getting back to you. So I love that
Yeah,
approach.
never, never, ever again. If I have a challenge for all of your listeners and mine, if they listen to this podcast, never send a proposal to somebody cold without them being on a Zoom call with you where you walk them through and you make sure they see every single page and you get their reaction. And I will challenge you that you should never put a proposal together unless they've told you up front what the number should be on the bottom line.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So tell everyone a little bit more about what you do and your work, and if you have anything exciting coming up that we should know about.
Yeah, I do. So, we are so excited about our Leadership Essentials program. We've been running this program for just a little while. And this is a program for people who are leading teams and who feel like they're not knocking it out of the park. And we love this program. I am so proud of this program. And it it does what we say it does, and I watch people get promoted, and so I love this program. And then in the new year, I think it's going to be in the new year, we're going to be doing a program for people who want to sort of create their own leadership brand, their own themselves as thought leaders, to put themselves out there, find their niche in an industry, um, and create their own. It's not like an online persona, it's like from the inside out, who they are in the world sort of persona. It's what I do with my clients, but we're going to put some content behind it. And so there'll be some coaching and there'll be some modules, so it'll be learning, and it'll be all the things. So, and that'll be a 6-month program that we'll be launching sometime in the new year. So if anybody's interested, send me an email, Melanie at experimentalleader.com, and tell me you're interested in that program. It's going to be a really cool program for people who really want to dive in and, figure out how to be at the top of their industry because they've figured out who they are within their industry, like where they know what they contribute industry wide, um, not just being skilled, but where they've defined a place for themselves in the world.
Brilliant. I love it. And where can people find more about you and find
Sure.
you in all the places online?
Everything is on melanieparish.com. So you can, and we're on social media, mostly on Melanie Parish or Experimental Leader. We've got tags on Experimental Leader. I mean, we've got everything. You can find everything on my website though. And if you want to email us, we'll send you a Kata card, or we'll send you something. Send us a note. We'll send you something. And we've got all sorts of prizes and things we can send out. And then you'll get on our list, and then we'll send you lots of things and tell you about us. So um, we love telling people who we are and what we do in the world. We really love helping people be better leaders. I think people really suffer in leadership, and it's really important to me to try to help them feel good about that journey, because I don't want people to suffer at work. I want people to love the work they do. It's really important to me.
I love it. Absolutely. And so all those links are going to be down below in the show notes.
Oh,
And
thank
with
you.
that,
That's good. Thank
that
goodness.
I have one final question for you, and I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. And that is, how do you in your business work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean?
Yeah. Well, I'll just give you our latest tip, which is just a silly little tip. Um, and that is that we keep a list of decisions that we make. And it was because we kept my team started saying, okay, well, I guess we'll do it that way now, because they had the feeling I kept changing my mind when we talked about things. I was literally just losing track as the leader of what decisions we were making when we talked about things. And we started keeping track on one document of what decisions we'd made about things. And now we just go to it. And if I've already made the decision, I don't make it again. And that saved us so much time. And it sounds ridiculous, but I like run 2 companies and they're in charge of a lot of things. And so that's my tip. Keep track of what decisions you make as a team, as a leader, so that you don't have to keep making them. Because I think this happens not just for me, but for lots of leaders. And and it has helped us so much to only make decisions once.
I love that tip. And I can say, just from conversations with my clients, you are most definitely not alone. I think that's very common that that happens. So, for all of you listening, if you're like, that might be me too, then great opportunity to do the same. Melanie, thank you so much. I've loved our conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, I hope you got as much value out of this discussion as I did. I will see you again next week.
It was so fun to be here. Thank you for having me, Krista.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show, and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community, where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.